The story of Rome does not begin with marble columns or vast armies. It begins with a quiet landscape of hills and a slow-moving river called the Tiber. Legend tells us of two brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were raised by a wolf in the wild. They decided to build a city, but they could not agree on where to put it. Eventually, Romulus stood alone on the Palatine Hill. He traced a line in the dirt to mark the walls of his new home. This was a simple beginning for a place that would one day rule the known world. In these early days, Rome was just a collection of huts made of wood and straw. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. People lived by the cycles of the sun and the seasons. They farmed the nearby valleys and watched their sheep graze on the slopes. Life was slow and repetitive. As we look at these early Romans, we see a people who valued order and tradition. They believed their city was special, protected by spirits of the hearth and the field. There were kings in those days, but they were not like the emperors of later centuries. They were leaders of a small community, navigating the politics of local tribes. 7 kings ruled in succession, each adding a small piece to the city's identity. One built the first bridge over the river. Another organized the religious festivals that would last for 1,000 years. But the kingship eventually grew heavy and unkind. The people decided they no longer wanted one man to hold all the power. They turned away from the crown and created something new. Now, we drift into the era of the Republic. This was a time of shared responsibility. Instead of a king, the Romans elected 2 men called consuls. They served for only 1 year, ensuring that no single person could become too powerful. Beside them was the Senate, a gathering of elders who offered wisdom and guidance. The streets of Rome began to change during this time. The wood and straw gave way to stone and brick. The Forum became the heart of the city, a place where people gathered to talk and trade. It was a dusty, busy space, but it felt stable. The Romans were building a system that they believed would last forever. They were a practical people, focused on laws and infrastructure. They built roads that stretched out like veins, connecting Rome to the surrounding towns. Let's move to another phase of this growing power. As the Republic became stronger, it began to look beyond the 7 hills. To the south lay the powerful city of Carthage across the blue waters of the Mediterranean. The 2 cities were destined to clash. This period was defined by long, slow conflicts known as the Punic Wars. We think of the great general Hannibal, who led his elephants across the high, snowy peaks of the Alps. It was a journey of immense silence and cold. The Romans felt the pressure of his presence for many years, but they did not give up. They were patient. They waited for their moment. Eventually, the tide turned. Rome crossed the sea and defeated Carthage, leaving the city in ruins. This victory changed everything. Rome was no longer just a local power, it was now the master of the sea. With this new power came a great deal of wealth and many new responsibilities. The city grew larger and more crowded. People from all over the world began to arrive, bringing new languages and customs. The simple life of the early farmers was fading away. In its place was a complex society of rich and poor. The Senate struggled to manage the vast new territories. Corruption began to seep into the system like water through a cracked wall. 2 brothers, the Gracchi, tried to fix the problems by giving land back to the poor. Their efforts were met with resistance, and the peace of the Republic began to fracture. The internal calm that had defined Rome for so long was replaced by a slow, simmering tension. Now we transition to the life of a man who would change the course of history. Julius Caesar was born into an old family, but he had modern ambitions. He was a man of words and action, moving through the political landscape with a quiet confidence. He spent many years in the north, in the wild forests of Gaul. He lived among his soldiers, eating their bread and sleeping in their camps. He sent back long letters to Rome, describing the strange lands and the people he encountered. His popularity grew with every passing year. When he finally returned to Rome, he did not come alone. He brought his army with him, crossing the small Rubicon River. This act signaled the end of the Republic. The old ways of shared power were falling away, replaced by the will of a single individual. Caesar's time at the top was brief, but it set the stage for what to come. After his departure, the city fell into a period of confusion. It was his nephew, Octavian, who would eventually bring order back to the chaos. Octavian was a different kind of leader. He was cautious and methodical. He took the name Augustus and became the first official emperor of Rome. Under his rule, the city entered a long period of relative peace known as the Pax Romana. The sounds of war faded into the distance. Instead, the air was filled with the sound of chisels hitting stone. Augustus boasted that he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. He built great theaters, baths, and temples. He encouraged poets like Virgil to write the story of the Roman spirit. As we breathe in the calm of the Augustan age, we see a world that felt permanent. The borders were secure, and the grain ships arrived regularly from Egypt. The Mediterranean was a Roman lake. Travelers could walk from the shores of Spain to the deserts of Syria without ever leaving Roman territory. The roads were safe, and the laws were consistent. It was a golden afternoon for the empire. People lived their lives in the shadow of grand monuments, believing that this stability was the natural state of the world. But even in this era of peace, the seeds of future change were being planted. The empire was so large that it required an enormous amount of energy to maintain. For now, however, the sun remained high in the sky and the marble of Rome sparkled in the light. The peace established by Augustus lasted for generations. Life in the empire settled into a steady, rhythmic pulse. We now drift into the lives of the emperors who followed, a long line of men who held the world in their hands. Some were quiet and dutiful, while others were distracted by the luxury of their positions. The city of Rome continued to expand. It was now a metropolis of over 1 million people. Imagine the sound of thousands of sandals walking over stone pavements every morning. The smell of roasted meats drifted from street stalls, and the fountains splashed cool water into marble basins. This was the heart of the world, a place of immense complexity and hidden corners. Let's move to the reign of Trajan, an emperor who took the empire to its greatest physical extent. He was a soldier at heart, always looking toward the horizon. Under his leadership, Roman legions marched into the forests of Dacia and the deserts of Mesopotamia. The map of the empire stretched further than ever before. To commemorate his victories, he built a great column in Rome, carved with scenes of his journeys. It still stands today, a silent witness to a time when Rome felt limitless. Trajan was followed by Hadrian, a man who preferred to travel and see the world he ruled. Hadrian was a lover of architecture and Greek culture. He spent years away from Rome, visiting the provinces and ensuring the borders were strong. In the far north of Britain, Hadrian ordered the construction of a great wall. It was a long stone barrier that cut across the green hills, marking the edge of the civilization he knew. He also rebuilt the Pantheon in Rome, a temple with a massive dome and a single circular opening to the sky. When you stand inside it, the light moves slowly across the floor as the sun passes overhead. It is a place of deep stillness. Hadrian's reign was a time of consolidation. He realized that the empire could not grow forever. He focused on making what they had more beautiful and more secure. The world felt balanced during these years, like a heavy stone resting firmly on the ground. Now we transition to the life of Marcus Aurelius, the last of the 5 good emperors. He was a man of thoughts and reflection. Even while he was away on the cold, damp borders of the empire, he spent his nights writing in his journal. He wrote about the importance of being a good person, of staying calm in the face of trouble, and of accepting the flow of nature. His writings, known as the Meditations, show us a leader who felt the weight of his responsibility. He did not seek glory, but he did his duty. During his time, the first shadows began to stretch across the empire. There were outbreaks of sickness and pressure from tribes in the north. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life in a tent, looking out at the dark forests, trying to keep the world together. When Marcus Aurelius passed away, the long summer of the Pax Romana began to cool. His son, Commodus, took his place, but he did not share his father's wisdom. He was more interested in the games of the arena than the governance of the state. The stability of the previous century began to wobble. The smooth transitions of power that had kept the empire strong were replaced by uncertainty. After Commodus, the empire entered a period of great unrest. Generals began to compete for the throne, using their armies to claim power. This era is often called the crisis of the 3rd century. It was a time when the crown changed hands quickly, and the borders of the empire became porous. Let's move to another figure who tried to bring order back to the fraying edges of the world. Diocletian was a man of structure and rules. He looked at the vast empire and realized it was too big for one man to rule alone. He decided to split it into 2 halves, the East and the West. He appointed a